Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America, Can We Talk? Today, we're going to talk about Project Veritas blows up Bernie's world. The left's mission is control. Joining us is David McIntosh to talk about that. Clarence Thomas film coming to a theater near you. Cannot wait to tell you about that. And finally, Wisconsin says no to clean voter rolls. And I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth.
Hello again and welcome to America Can We Talk and to today's Verse 5. You likely know that tonight is the final Democrat presidential candidate debate prior to the first caucus this election season, the Iowa caucus on February 3rd. The only Democrat candidates on stage tonight will be Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and Tom Steyer. Only 6 candidates. A lot of controversy about the idea that of all of the candidates who originally declared, and in fact, some are still running, only 6 will take the stage, and all to the disappointment of many who are the hyphenated American voter, disappointed that there are no people of color on that stage. That would have been the top story about tonight until this morning when Project Veritas, which we talked about in the show many times, Project Veritas works very hard to secure and record statements that are being recorded. It is Veritas, obviously being the Latin for truth, Project Truth. It is an organization dedicated to bringing the truth to the American people, often hid by people who don't want that truth revealed. The video released by Project Veritas this morning involves statements recorded by a Bernie Sanders campaign person, a Sanders organizer, someone who goes around stirring up support for Bernie Sanders, named Kyle Jurek. And Kyle Jurek was recorded by Project Veritas saying what he really thinks will happen and should happen if the Democrat Party fails to nominate Bernie Sanders to be our next Democrat presidential contender and our next president. Folks, I'm going to comment more after we play this video, but I want to just plant this one seed. The attitude, the anger, the outrage that you hear out of this man, what he thinks should happen to people who don't support Bernie Sanders or people who have been vilified by Bernie Sanders, is the direct outcome of the radicalization of America's left, the direct outcome of the campaign positions, campaign speeches by Bernie Sanders, by AOC, and others, simply implanting a revolutionary outrage in the minds of ignorant, ill-informed young men such as Kyle Jurek, who had the following to say, not realizing he was being recorded. And again, he's a Bernie Sanders organizer. Take it away, Kyle and Project Veritas.
So if Trump gets reelected, what?
Cities burn. I mean, we gotta try. I mean, in Nazi Germany, after the fall of the Nazi Party, there was a shit ton of the populace that was Nazified. And Germany had to spend billions of dollars re-educating people to not be Nazis. We're probably gonna have to do the same thing here. And that's kind of what Bernie's hey, free education for everybody, because we're gonna have to teach you not to be a Nazi. There's a reason Joseph Stalin had gulags, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, gulags were a lot better than what the CIA has told us that they were. People were actually paid a living wage in gulags. They had conjugal visits in gulags. Gulags were actually meant for re-education. The greatest way to break a billionaire of their privilege and their idea that they're superior, go out and break rocks for 12 hours a day. You're now a working class person, and you're gonna learn what that means, right?
Bernie doesn't get the nomination, or it goes to the second round at the DNC convention. Milwaukee will burn. It'll start in Milwaukee, and then when they And when the police push back on that, and other cities are
Be ready to be in Milwaukee for the DNC convention. We're going to make 1978 look like a Girl Scout cookout. The cops are going to be the ones that are getting beaten in Milwaukee.
Folks, I meant to say before I played that, I'm going to warn you about language. Obviously, this is a man who freely uses the F word, but that's hardly the least offensive thing about what he had to say. You have to listen to what this young man is saying. He is saying that if Bernie Sanders doesn't win the nomination, Milwaukee will burn. And when police try to stop the protesters, police will be the ones beaten. In portions I didn't play, other cities will have riots. He is saying Bernie Sanders and his radical leftist revolution, his socialist revolution in this country, must win. And we face violence. We, all Americans, face violence if Bernie Sanders does not win. He's talking about vilifying successful Americans. Effing billionaires, in his words, will be sent to re-education camps and forced to pound rocks for 12 hours so they can become working class people. They can realize they're no better than working class people. Now, I realize that what you just heard was not a Bernie Sanders campaign authorized statement. Clearly, Bernie Sanders is going to issue some statement, maybe he already has. I didn't find it before we started today. Maybe he'll issue some statement saying, hey, you know, that guy kind of got carried away. We didn't really mean that. Understand, Bernie Sanders, in his speeches over the decades, in his speeches last time he ran for president and this time running for president, he is implanting in the minds of millions of young Americans hatred of their country, outrage against successful people, the notion that he is bringing socialism to this country as a form of freeing the working people and punishing the successful people. He is implanting this outrage. Whatever Bernie Sanders says about this campaign work, and I'm going to assume he's going to disassociate himself and say, that guy got carried away, you know, he's not one of us anymore. We don't talk like that. But I want to tell you folks, Bernie Sanders engenders that thinking. He cultivates it. He loves it. He intends it. He wants people to feel. He wants the Democrat Party to be afraid to not give him the nomination. He wants the voters in this country to be afraid of his followers, his revolution. This is a very, very dangerous time in our country. We are exactly 1 year and 6 days away from someone being sworn in as the president, the new president, on January 20th, 2021. We're a year away. This man, Bernie Sanders, is now the top. He's polling at the top of the pile of the Democrats who remain still in the race. He's number one in Iowa. He's number one in other early caucus or early primary states. He is climbing to the top of the polls. He is causing the support for Elizabeth Sanders, who is, Elizabeth Warren. To be really clear, she's just as radical as Bernie Sanders. She's just a little smarter in what she says, a little more willing to use language that sounds tepid and agreeable. This is a very dangerous time in this country. And I'm going to ask you to pay attention tonight. If you dare to watch the Democrat debate tonight, which will be in Des Moines, Iowa, the last debate before they have their early Iowa caucus. Do you think any of the 6 people I mentioned at the start of this first 5 day, any of those 6 contenders will dare to call out Bernie Sanders on this campaign worker? Will they dare to call him out and say, Bernie, you need to denounce that guy. You need to be saying to America, this is not what we intend. We do not threaten violence if we don't get our socialist revolution underway. I'm going to guess no other candidate on that stage will dare do it. Maybe Biden, maybe, but I don't think so. I think we'll all be silent. And frankly, the media's complicity in letting Bernie Sanders roll forward toward the nomination without ever calling out how radical, how extreme, how truly crazy, un-American his ideas are. And I'll close out this first 5 by saying this. Over the Christmas break, I had the opportunity to speak to a young person. You know, I do a lot of public speaking, go to a lot of meetings. A young person who came up afterwards to say, I don't think that it's very nice when conservatives call Bernie Sanders' ideas anti-American. People shouldn't say that. They shouldn't call Bernie Sanders' ideas anti-American because lots of Americans like him. This young person was a Bernie Sanders supporter and was offended by the idea that his ideas were characterized, not just by me, but by many conservatives, as anti-American. Friends, we all have to be saying that. This phenomena of Bernie Sanders' popularity is now #1 in many of the early states and in Iowa among the Democrat contenders. This is a time, I mean, as I've said before, it'd be kind of a good thing for America to actually have a debate about socialism in the form of the 2020 presidential debates between Donald Trump and whoever wins the debate, the nomination on the Democrat side. And it would be especially helpful, honestly, if Bernie Sanders won it. Because I think America needs to have this conversation nationally. We need to understand these people are not joking. This is not a dry run. This is not pretend. This is not philosophically or kind of, esoterically speaking. This is a man who means if he wins this nomination and he wins the presidency, he will start the most radical transformation of America toward a socialist country from day one, starting when he's sworn in 2021. And he'll have millions of Americans like this crazed young man portrayed, who was on the Project Veritas video, crazed young man, spurring him along, agreeing him. Don't think Bernie Sanders could win and then kind of moderate and back up and say, well, I don't really mean all that crazy stuff. He means it. His supporters mean it. And this would truly bring about the most dangerous era in American history since the era of our revolution. And that, my friends, is today's First Five. Well, as I mentioned at the start of the show, we have a guest joining us today. Very exciting that he's able to join us. I'm not sure if we have him on video or phone, but in any case, David McIntosh is joining us. And I want to just mention a little bit about him. He's been on our show before. So if you're a regular listener, you probably know who David McIntosh is. But he is the president of the Club for Growth, which is a fabulous organization that backs conservative candidates. They back conservative candidates for the purpose of helping them push forward conservative ideas and specifically fiscal conservatism, economic conservatism. So David McIntosh, former member of the United States Congress, represented Indiana's 2nd Congressional District in Congress from 1995 to 2001. He was part of the subcommittee he chaired the subcommittee on regulatory relief, pushed through the Congressional Review Act, which turned out to be a godsend when President Trump came along, getting rid of a lot of regulations that were passed without any sort of fairness or any support really from the because the agencies that passed those regulations didn't follow the proper procedure and made it easier for our Congress to undo those regulations. But he served in the Reagan administration as a special assistant to Attorney General Edwin Meese, special assistant to President Reagan for domestic affairs. During the first Bush administration, he served as executive director of the President's Council on Competitiveness. He is a man committed to free market capitalist ideas and policies and bringing out the notion, the understanding that those policies actually are what keep America strong, free, and actually keep our people in the strongest, best, and most robust economy we can have. Helps our people. So David McIntosh, I believe we have ready to join us. Well, there you are. Hi, David.
Great to be with you. How are you today?
I'm very well. I'm glad to see you. Glad you're here. Well, I want to jump right in and tell our listeners, Club for Growth put out a video that is talking about what the left we are looking at today in the 2020 presidential contenders on the Democrat side, what the left really has as their goal. And just a fabulous video. I have a clip of it I want to play for all of you, and I urge you to share this with your friends. It's from Club for Growth, talking about the left's goal is control. So if we can start by playing that clip.
The left wants control.
What this requires is massive government intervention.
It does. Yeah, I have no problem saying that.
Control over education.
That's why I'm calling for universal free college and the cancellation of student loan debt.
Over banking.
should have a non-for-profit public option for basic banking services, and we should be piloting these projects through the U.S. Postal Service or in any other number of ways.
They want to dictate how successful you can be.
We could increase the taxes that people are paying, so 70%, 80%. We've had it as high as 90%.
What car you can drive.
You're talking about zero carbon emissions, no use of fossil fuels within 12 years.
That is the goal.
How is that possible? You're talking about everybody having to drive an electric car.
It's going to require a lot of rapid change that we don't even conceive as possible right now.
Even what you eat.
We're going to be okay if the vast majority of the world goes vegetarian immediately.
And how you drink.
See, right now we're in a mode where I think we're thinking about it mostly through the perspective of guilt. You know, from using a straw to eating a burger. Am I part of the problem? In a certain way, yes.
The goal isn't efficiency or affordability. They don't care if it doesn't add up.
I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
They prey on fear, predicting the end of the world.
And we're like, the world is gonna end in 12 years.
The goal isn't safety or prosperity. They want the money.
Would you support a carbon tax? Some other candidates say they would.
Yeah, no, I would.
If we implement a carbon tax, that's an additional amount of a large amount of revenue that we can have.
And they want the power.
I'm concerned that if we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected.
Because the goal is control. The Democrat socialists won't stop until they have total power. Tell Democrats this stops now.
David McIntosh, I must congratulate you on a stellar video that we just played most of that Club for Growth put out, and it relates to the real mission of the Democrat Party. So first, congratulations on that.
Thank you. We wanted to get that message out to everybody that what they are really after is not good things for Americans, free this and free that. What they really want is to control the economy and control how we live our lives. They started with taking control of the Democratic Party, and now they've successfully done that. 91% of the time, Democrat freshmen now vote with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They're voting with the socialists in the Democratic Party in Congress. And next they want the Senate and the White House, and then ultimately the Supreme Court. And so political control is their first agenda item. But then as we see in that video, they want to control what we drive as a car, what we eat, what we drink, what job we can have, literally everything about our lives. They want to control it, and they want to tax it if anybody happens to be successful in working and making money in a job. You think about that 90% of your paycheck going to the government. That's the agenda of the Democrats and the Socialist Democrats, because they want it all to be theirs, and then they'll hand it back out to people who they like and when they like. A terrible, terrible choice for America. And that is the big question in this election. Will they go forward with their agenda, gain more control in government, or will we have the electorate realize we stand for freedom in America? We stand for individual opportunity. We stand for people making their own way in their lives, making choices about what's best for them and for their family and their children, not the government. And that's the fundamental choice that we wanted to present to the American people for this election, because we think that's the consequence. If somebody might not like Donald Trump and say, oh, I'm going to vote for the Democrats this time, what they're really voting for are these socialists who will then take over everything in their life, take over their job, take over their savings for their programs. And that message has to get out there to the country.
That is so well said. David McIntosh does a great summary, exactly what they're up to. You know what I find so troubling is when AOC was first elected, she's shockingly, in her first term, she seems to have taken Washington by storm. But when she was elected, many people said, well, yeah, she's a little out there. She's a little extreme. The Green New Deal is kind of crazy. But this isn't really today's Democrat Party. I mean, this is, she's an extremist, and no one's really going to go along with her. And the same thing with Bernie Sanders. He proposes things that used to be pretty far afield from the core Democrat Party platform. But no one, now you're in Washington, maybe you can correct me, no one within the Democratic establishment ever says AOC's out of line, she's too extreme, Bernie Sanders is too extreme, we don't want to become Democrat socialists. By their silence, I would say, the Democrat leadership is agreeing if this is where the country goes, that's fine with them. What's your take on that?
Totally. I think they're actually terrified of AOC and the socialists. You know, when 92% of the time they're voting identically with her, they're not making a difference either. And you see this on the stage. We'll see it tonight in Iowa. The leftists, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, and I think Steyer are going to control the agenda. Yes. And nobody else is going to stand up and say, this is crazy. And just look recently, impeachment, they rushed to impeach Trump because they can't stand him. And the left kept saying, we have to impeach him now, just because he's Donald Trump. And now they're totally embarrassed and can't carry that argument to the American people on an issue that we don't get involved in the Club for Growth, but the recent strike in Iran, again, taking out this terrorist. I'm sitting back saying, are you guys really defending the terrorist just because it's Donald Trump that eliminated him as a threat to America? And I think nonpartisan, just average folks in America are going to look at that and say, that's crazy. What, you know, I get it. They're emotional. They don't like Donald Trump. They don't like what they see going on, but they're just crazy in some of the things that they're proposing.
They are, and I tell you something else I think happens in the mindset of a lot of Americans, which is, you know, our country's been around a long time. We've managed to still, for the most part, be the representative of freedom, the bastion of freedom of the world, really the example to the world of how you can have a country where we, the people, we have a democratic republic. We have held on to our freedom. We've held on to, we just have a soaring economy, a free market economy, and people listen to Bernie and others, and they think even if they win, even if Bernie Sanders wins, nothing bad can really happen to America. We'll never really go down the path of Venezuela. We'll never really go down the path of Cuba. It can't happen here. But I think, and I'd love to hear your reaction, we most definitely could, if we got a Bernie Sanders as president and ultimately Democrat control over the House and Senate, we could go down that path. Is that far-fetched to you?
No, I totally agree with you, Debbie. Let me tell you a story I heard. I haven't met the two young people that came from Venezuela, but they're out on the circuit speaking to Americans about this. And they're warning, they're saying it's not just the real kind of communist thugs who've taken over in the end. It started 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where first they gave away free college to everybody. Then they had free Medicare for everybody. And the oil that they were producing paid for all that. Then the oil prices went down and they couldn't pay for it. And so you had revolution, and that's when you got Venezuela. The whole country fell apart. You got the communists who just drove it into the ground. And so when people say, hey, this is a choice about the future of the country, whether we want to continue to be America, the land of the free and the brave and strong country that has stood for all of the values we hold dear, it's a slippery slope, but it happened in Venezuela. They started with the very plans that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are talking about. Free college. By the way, your video earlier tells me when they want to give away free education, what they really want is re-education. You know, that's their agenda. We'll make it free, but we're going to make you all go to it, and as long as we put you in the gulag. And they want free Medicare for all. That's how it happened in Venezuela. And then eventually, when the country couldn't pay for it, the real bad dictators and thugs took over, and they lost all their freedom.
Exactly what happened. And actually, there is one set of two young men here in America from Venezuela who are trying to ring the alarm bell in America and wake America up. They were on my show 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were practically interrupting each other.
They're great.
All these points, they're saying, my goodness, you know, these arguments, they sound so good. And to that young man who's, I guess, soon to be a former Bernie Sanders campaign guy, but he is he is rabidly excited about the idea that we're going to force this agenda and America's going to do it. And everyone who doesn't agree with this radical agenda is going off re-education camps. And these young men from Venezuela were so, like you're saying, they're caught up in the idea. We've, been there, done this. We've seen this. These very arguments about your healthcare should be free and your housing should be free and your education should be free. And the only reason you don't have it is those mean rich people who won't share with you. This is how that young guy you were listening to got around to saying, well, the billionaires need to be sent off to the gulags and pound rocks for 12 hours a day. It's just breathtaking that we have to have this conversation in America, given the world history. And I don't know. I mean, that Bernie Sanders guy, I mentioned at the end of my first five, I don't know if anyone on the debate stage tonight will ask Bernie about that. Is this guy speak for you? I hope they will. I hope some candidate or perhaps one of the questioners will ask that.
Maybe somebody will turn to Tom Steyer and say, hey, you're a billionaire. What do you think of Bernie's people saying you should go to a re-education camp?
Yeah, that would be a good question. Yes, that would be a great question. Okay, I want to turn, I know you have limited time and I'm so grateful again. David McIntosh, Club for Growth. I want to talk a little bit about the Trump economy. And just because it is just kind of an amazing thing that we Americans seem to have a very serious and close election coming up in November of this year between President Trump, the re-election of President Trump, or any of the leftists now running for president, the Democrat ticket. And you've been doing a lot of, I know, media coverage about the Trump economy. Can you just run through your top notion, your top measures of how well the economy is doing under President Trump, which, should be clear, is under free market economics?
That's right. It's the tax cuts that he put through, the deregulation that you mentioned, using the Congressional Review Act, and really the drive to unleash the ingenuity and the creativity and the hard work of the American people. What we're getting from that is the lowest unemployment in 50 years. People, if you want a job today, you can find a job and get a job here. Employers are begging people to come to work for them for good money. Wages and salaries are increasing for the first time in a real way, like 2 or 3% a year above inflation. And we're seeing record new jobs creation. Just the last month, another 140,000. And that's on top of 2 years where it's averaged more like 180 to 200,000 a month. That's a phenomenal economic recovery for America. And it's not at the high end. It's all across our country, all across the economy. Everybody who is engaged in working and wants to be in the economy is benefiting from it. People are able now to get off of welfare and have a better deal getting a job at the entry level in America. All of that is because of President Trump sticking with free market, pro-growth economic program that he started the first day he was in office. So that's going to be the other huge contrast in this election. Are people willing to throw that all away and risk it with these, grandiose ideas that we know could bankrupt the country and send us into a tailspin?
Absolutely, they could. Two last points on the Trump economy. One is that I love the measures continue to come out showing that not just across the board wonderful employment numbers, but even for African Americans and for women and for other minorities, the unemployment rate continues, the employment rate continues to go up, unemployment go down, meaning even people who are normally described as lagging behind our economy's performance or not always receiving the benefits of a booming economy are receiving those benefits, which makes it kind of amazing that the argument often on the American left is that there's all sorts of racism on our side. I would say if you're creating an economy that is actually blessing families of all backgrounds, you're doing great things. And I actually think it's going to the Democrat argument and really help President Trump for many Americans to say, why would I go back to voting for many Black Americans? Why would I go back to voting for Democrat policies that really always hurt the economy when I can have the Trump economy ongoing the next 4 years? Any thoughts on the racial aspect of the unemployment numbers?
Totally a key value. And we saw that last year in an election in Florida, where Ron DeSantis took that message. He added to it, I'm going to have school choice so that your children can get the same good education that people that live in the suburbs get. And he received a huge disproportionate share of black votes. I don't think he got the majority yet, but and he was running against a black socialist, basically a guy who was committed to the AOC agenda. And the black community said, no, we get it. We're much better off. Yep. We may not be Republicans, but we're much better off when they create jobs and our men and our women go to work and our families are able to enjoy life and progress and get out of the ghetto. That, you know, people assume that voters are ignorant and kind of sheep that just follow the media. They're not. They're smart. They understand what matters. And I think President Trump can make an argument directly to those folks. Hey, I'm with you. I'm going to make sure your life is better off. And I think that'll be a success for him in the next election.
I sure do. One last point on the economy, and then I know we need to let you go. But, you know, as I will confess, as I have my listeners before, in my past, all the way college and through law school, I voted Democrat, kind of just because I thought that's what you do if you care about poor people. And then I, you know, became hardworking, working long hours, and began actually diving into politics and thinking about it myself, and became a very firm conservative Republican for many decades. But I'm getting at the point that you hear many people say about the why they stay with the Democrat Party is because they really care about people more than they care about tax rates and unemployment rates. They care about people. But tax rates and unemployment rates tie directly to human happiness, to human freedom, to dignity. The idea that you have more and more Americans previously on welfare, because the welfare numbers have gone way down under President Trump, formerly on welfare, now supporting themselves, now self-reliant, now participating in the American dream. Economic issues like taxes and unemployment are actually human issues. They're human happiness, human dignity, human sense of worth and self-reliance, and a sense of participation, of belonging and joining in our American dream. So I'd love to have any response to that as we close out our happy interview today.
Debbie, you said it beautifully. I'm not sure I could say it any better. I'll just share with you a story. When I was in Congress, a young man who's a young doctor, a minority who'd grown up in the ghetto, came up to me and he said, you know, I've not really been a Republican before, but you really care about people. You care about my people. And he went on to say, I think welfare is the modern form of slavery. It's keeping my family and my folks in the ghetto instead of giving them that hope and that opportunity to have a great life that everybody else enjoys. So he got it. And we as Republicans need to spread that message. We care about free markets. We care about good economy. We care about that because we care about people. That everything in our country, our economy, our society is people. And we want to see them prosper and benefit and pursue their dreams and have a great life. The founders called it the pursuit of happiness. And that's what we want within the pursuit of government.
David McIntosh, thank you so very much for joining me today. I want to commend our listeners, first of all, your website, Club for Growth, but also your organization backs, you actually thoroughly vet candidates for Congress and the Senate, and back people who are going to stand for the principles you believe in. And actually, if you ever want to check out a candidate, if you're listening in your state to some candidate speak, and there are several people in the race, go to Club for Growth, read who they're endorsing, why they're endorsing them. It's a brilliant thing you do. I love that. So your website again, clubforgrowth.org,
clubforgrowth.org. Okay. And come, you website. Can sign up for free to get all the information, and we'd love to have you.
David McIntosh, thank you so much for joining me.
Wonderful, Debbie. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, I'm telling you, that is a great website, and it really is filled with information. And also, I actually go look at it because you might imagine, I get contacted by candidates all across the country all the time, you know, look for my endorsement, asking me to endorse them. And Club for Growth is one place I will go look, because their willingness to take the time to thoroughly vet candidates, to understand their viewpoints, to get some sense of, if these people go to Washington to represent their people, their constituency, will they stand with these ideas they believe in or not? They're just a great resource. And as you heard, David McIntosh thoroughly committed to the idea of a prosperous economy that blesses everyone. So that, and this will actually, you ought to keep in mind tonight, listeners, if you're going to watch a Democrat debate, some of the ideas we were discussing, how are the Democrats answering? What are they standing up for? Are they willing to stand up and say, you know, Bernie Sanders is way too far out there. He actually is a radical socialist. He really will change our country. He really will hurt our country. Will anyone say that? My guess is no. Two other quick stories for today. One is that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, I mean, everyone obviously knows who he is. He's served in the Supreme Court a long time. There's a documentary coming out about him. And Clarence Thomas is just a towering figure, both in the Supreme Court jurisprudence, and because he is just a committed and well-researched, a lot of logic, a lot of commitment to the constitutional principles in the decisions he issues from the Supreme Court. As a short aside, before I tell you about the film, I happen to know he has, you know, people who serve in the Supreme Court, all of them have law clerks. And law clerks, you know, they come and they're given jobs, they're assigned cases, they have to write draft briefs, they have to do research, you know, or draft opinions. It's a very, very competitive world to get to become a Supreme Court clerk for any of the Supreme Court justices. Justice Clarence Thomas has such good relationships with his former clerks, people who long left working for him in the Supreme Court as a clerk, gone into private practice, gone into practicing law, some of them going on to serve in the bench in the federal courts around our country. His experience with them in the Supreme Court is so unifying and so edifying, so enlightened that his clerks, Justice Thomas and his wife, regularly have get-togethers, intentional planned get-togethers with the former clerks who served under Justice Thomas, because they are so fond of him, they've learned from him, they're so respectful of him, they want to keep that connection with a true American patriot and a conservative leader in our judiciary. So there's a film coming out about Justice Thomas, and the subline caption is the story you didn't know, but this film is coming out, and it's actually going to be out, I think in May, going to be play someplace like on Netflix. But on January 31st of this year, it's going to play in theaters around this country. I discovered it's going to play in Dallas, Texas, where I am from. So I'm going to organize a bunch of ladies, or maybe some guys too, but probably a bunch of ladies, to go watch this Clarence Thomas film to learn more about his life. The film is actually an interview of him, along with his wife, Ginny Thomas, about his life story, his journey. If you didn't know, he grew up in poverty. He grew up, you know, raised by a grandfather, living in an era there was still segregation. And he talks about his journey to becoming, you know, a poor young man, you know, parents not around, being raised by a grandfather, and to sitting on the most esteemed court in our country, the United States Supreme Court. The documentary is called Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words. It's going to be on PBS in May, but you might be able to see it in your area on January 31st of this year. If you go to my website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage, under shows, drop down list of links, I included a link to all the cities where this film is going to play on January 31st. And I think it's a really important film politically for this year. And the reason is the left is going to spend much of the time during their campaign, whoever wins the nomination for the Democrat presidency, whoever wins the various primaries we have in U.S. House races and Senate races, leftists in this country continually argue that America is a racist country, and that the only solution to such racism is to vote for the radical left in this country. Bernie Sanders, big race baiter, mostly for president, big race baiters, constantly planting the seed that America is a deeply horrible racist country. And the reason these leftists cannot stand Justice Thomas is because he obliterates their false narrative. Justice Thomas believes in the America of the founding. He rose to the success he has achieved because of the America of the founding. He understands it. He reads about the Constitution and the meaning of the provisions in the Constitution what the founders intended, and he deeply believes in it. He is a shining example of the American dream, of the ability to work hard and get ahead and rise and move into a position of responsibility because of the ideas that created America. Justice Thomas, legendary Supreme Court Justice. I urge you to check out this film, Clarence Thomas, and is called Created Equal. Clarence Thomas, in his own words. Find it in your area, go see it, and recognize, actually be ready with some of the facts that you'll learn in that film, because the film is pretty much interviews or based on interviews of Clarence Thomas and his wife. And one thing he says, I want to just plant the seed. I urge you to watch it and learn lots of things. But one thing he says it's really, really stellar to understand. Clarence Thomas says that his biggest impediment to his success in life was not the Southern Democrat racists where he grew up and where there was segregation. It was not the Southern Democrat racists, not even the Ku Klux Klan, not even the Jim Crow laws, all put in place by the Democrats. It was, in his words, his biggest impediment to his success was the modern day white liberal. Think about that. Think about that. A man of his towering stature saying it's not the Democrat Party's racism of the past. It's not alleged racism all over the place today. It is the mindset of the white liberal in this country. Can't urge you strongly enough to go see this film. I'm going to, hope you do too. Last story for today, I'm going to turn to, is something that's happening in Wisconsin. And I will tell you about the story in one moment. But I do want to just say a couple things about this show. My show is called America Can We Talk? If this is the first time you've watched, I want to be sure you know this is not my real studio. We are traveling in California and visiting family. My husband and I are out here, and so it's a makeshift studio. I received a few emails from people saying, hey, your studio doesn't look the same. So yeah, we're in California. I'll be back in my own studio where I always do my show by this coming Monday the 20th. So I'm here just one more week, but I don't ever want to miss doing this show. Number two, I want to say, we have a weekly email. If you'd like my weekly emails once a week on Fridays with links to all the stories we talk about during the week, you can subscribe to my email by going to our website, americacanwetalk.org. On the homepage, hit subscribe, put in your email, and I will add you to the list, and you'll get our weekly email. I want to thank, I actually got a ton of new subscribers recently, which is very exciting. I'm so happy to share my email with you. So I urge you to subscribe. I never share the email addresses with anybody, never sell them, never share them. It's just for my own use. Also, if you're listening to the show on social media, during this year, especially in 2020, we need to try to grow the power, the scope, the spread of the message of America's greatness and uniqueness, the message of this show during this 2020 election cycle. So please, on social media, wherever you are, share, like, subscribe, post, respond, comment. I love the American political conversation. I invite it. We need to be having it. I urge you to please like this Facebook page, subscribe on YouTube, tell your friends. Another reason to get the weekly newsletter is because you can use it to share this show. Forward my weekly email to everyone you think might be interested. It's a way to grow the show. And the final point is, this show has always been, since the very beginning of the show, which is now 5.5 years ago, always been 100% donor supported. 100%. No advertisers, no advertising cluttering up anything that I do. It's always been donor supported. And if you're able to support this show, now is the time. Go to my website, americacanwetalk.org, and hit the donate button. You can make a commitment to a recurring donation, or you can a one-time donation. Every donation helps to keep this show on air. It's expensive to keep on air. I will not stop talking about America until we have a reestablishment of this core love of America growing and expanding around this country, countering the dangerous message of the radical left. My message is always about preserving this extraordinary, unique, great experiment in human liberty, which is America. Would love your support if you're able to support it. Last topic for today has to do with something happening actually in Wisconsin, but it almost could be happening anywhere. And that is, in the state of Wisconsin, there is a county where the elections department, there was a thorough review of the names listed on the voter rolls. Thorough review, examination, who are these people, with the idea that the county was going to move forward in cleaning the voter rolls, to take off people now residing in the cemetery who are no longer with us, whose names should not be on the voter rolls, and to remove people who've moved away, who shouldn't be voting in Wisconsin because they don't live there anymore. But there's a county judge who has ordered this county elections department, and again, the county election is in the county. They have these great names in Wisconsin. The county of Ozaukee. So an Ozaukee County judge, Ozaukee, an Ozaukee County judge has ordered the election commission in that county to take those names of the deceased people and the people who moved away off the voter rolls, and they won't do it. They're just, the judge made this order, and the commissioners, the election commissioners, won't do it. They won't take their names off. So now the county said, okay, we're going to start finding them. So the 3 commissioners sitting on that commission who will not abide by the judge's order to take these dead people off the rolls are being fined they're $50 a day. The commission itself is being fined $50 a day. The individual commissioners who won't comply with the judge's order are being fined $250 a day. And I want to make this point in closing out today and then turning to our first 5. Think of a reason. Please email me if you think of one. Think of a reason why any election commissioner would want the names of dead people to remain on the voter rolls. Why? Think of a reason that any election commissioner who is constitutionally committed, obligated to uphold the law, would want to keep names on the voter rolls of people who've moved out of state and are not allowed to vote. There's no rational reason. None. But these people won't do it because, and I'll tell you, their reasons are, they say things like, and they had protesters outside the courthouse wearing duct tape over their mouths and protesting, saying, this is outrageous, you know, this is voter suppression, you're trying to attack our voter rolls, you're trying to attack our freedom to vote, taking names off of the voter rolls for people who aren't allowed to vote. Obviously, many of us know one good reason is because the Democrats like to have names on the rolls who, you know, they may just have that cemetery vote once in a while. They may need those names on there. And I'm going to tell you how important this is. In the state of Wisconsin, there are 200,000 people on the voter rolls, 200,000 people on the voter rolls who are not entitled to vote in Wisconsin, either because they are deceased or they don't live there anymore. President Trump only won the state of Wisconsin against Hillary Clinton by 23,000. So you have 200,000 invalid voters on the rolls in Wisconsin, and President Trump only won by 23,000. And so I got to tell you, folks, this is an ongoing battle, and this is a little bit relates back to our first 5, this Democrat mindset that has overtaken, this radical, tyrannical leftist mindset that's taken over the Democrat Party, that leads a Bernie Sanders supporter to say the cities will burn and we're going to kill, we're going to be attacking police if Bernie Sanders doesn't win. That same mindset is saying we are so determined to keep people on voter rolls who have no right to be there. We don't care what the judge says. We don't care what the law says. We don't care they don't live here anymore. We're going to decide who stays on those voter rolls because, you know, we just may need those votes. That's what those people are saying. There is no rational reason. The left comes out with these crazy arguments about, well, people might be scared off from voting and it might upset people, or maybe people become confused about whether they're allowed to vote. When they're removing people who are on the voter rolls who have no right to be there. Folks, we have a huge issue heading our way in the 2020 elections. Cleaning voter rolls ought to be, you know, a slam dunk, no dispute, not controversial decision in every election, in every county in this country, every election commission, election department in this country. Cleaning voter rolls, having accurate voter rolls, one would think would be a commonly held across the board politically view or mission, but it's not. Ask yourself why. And finally, folks, I'm going to turn to telling you why the stories we talked about today matter to you. To start with today, we talked about the Project Veritas blowing Bernie's cover. Campaign field organizers are the true believers, like this guy we saw. They're the bedrock energy for candidate support. Project Veritas captured a Bernie Sanders field organizer, Trump supporters to be sent to re-education camps. Soviet gulags weren't so bad. They had re-education. So re-education camps for Americans are not so bad. American business executives deserve the gulag experience. If Bernie doesn't win the Democrat nomination at Milwaukee convention, Milwaukee will burn. Police will be attacked. This is the mindset of those who embrace leftism and socialism, tyrannical control. Americans must realize and reject this overwhelmingly. Clarence Thomas film coming soon. The life story and triumphs and challenges of Clarence Thomas validate American ideals. That's why the left reviles Thomas and does not want his story told. Clarence Thomas is a powerful intellect, a man of great decency and good humor, grew up in poverty, has known the evils of racism, has overcome them, lifted by his faith to stay committed to hard work and to what is good and right. Thomas is the American dream personified. He is a role model for all. Go see the Clarence Thomas documentary film and invite your friends to join you. And on the Democrats protesting the Wisconsin cleanup of voter rolls, documented errors in voting rolls include dead people and people who moved away. But in the range of 200,000 voters who should be removed or made ineligible. Democrats in Wisconsin are opposing this cleanup of voter rolls. And they claim it will discourage minority voters from registering, will cause loss of trust in elections. These are irrational assessments. There is no legitimate reason to oppose the cleanup of inaccurate voter rolls. It is massively insulting to minorities to claim they can't handle voter registration process. It's an admission by the leftists that they just may need that cemetery vote. And that, my friends, is America Can We Talk for today. Thank you so much for tuning in every Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Central Time, right here from America Can We Talk. I love your support. I love your subscribing to the show. On my website, americanwetalk.org. Please, on social media, do the things you do to help a show grow, because it's important in this year 2020 to have more and more voices speaking up for the goodness and the greatness of this unique and precious country, America. I speak up for America because America matters. I'll talk to you next time.
America, Can We Talk? Truth about America.
Can you hear